Yep.
And,
Oh, do you want?
yes.
Okay, sorry.
Is this working?
Thank you, Patrick. And thank you, everyone, for being here. It's really encouraging to see so many faces. Could I get just a quick show of hands of employers, I guess, business representatives, and then planners or municipal? Okay, I'm just kind of curious of the mix. Currently in Lexington, there are about 4 commercial districts. Hartwell area, the Hartwell Avenue that goes into Bedford a little bit, is our largest commercial district. It has 1 million square feet of office space. And it was built mostly back in the 50s and 60s, adjacent to Hanscom, low-level buildings, very office park oriented. Everyone had to drive in. They were mostly built up in response to providing space for contract works around Department of Defense. So then over the years, the ebbs and flows of real estate, we didn't see too much change. Then in 2008, obviously the crash. And after that, it really kind of spurred the community for 2 reasons. Not only there's extreme vacancy in the area after 2008, but they're also recognizing that, their approach since the 80s with really limited growth has put a damper on their commercial tax revenues. So stopping that growth has also limited the quality of life that they wanted to see and some of the amenities and some of the services they expected in the community. So with those 2 things coming together at a point in time, there was more of a political will to look at the zoning. How can we take at least our largest commercial district, an area that fortunately for Lexington is kind of more on the periphery, so they didn't see as it impacting a lot of the more suburban single-family residential community. And how can we really leverage that? What can we do to that area to make it, just enhance it, start to increase the occupancy, make it more attractive. So they came up with the concept of what they called the Transportation Management Overlay District. It's a TMOD. Now, this was in conjunction with a slight increase to the FAR. Now, at that time, it wasn't a great increase, and we still have some issues around parking, but it did increase it from 0.125 to 0.325. So it wasn't a huge increase, but there was 0.3. Oh yes, thank you. That's right.
I would know that.
Yeah, so he would know that. So 0.325. So the increase was there, and it helped a little bit, but still, even from 2008 to now, we hadn't seen too much redevelopment. And there's a couple reasons for that. But our TMOD also was not designed specifically to address, a shuttle, which we do have now, which we'll talk a little bit about. But the TMOD at least started to create the conversation about what is important to provide for this area as an alternative to the standard transportation, which has been your single occupancy vehicle. And it's suburban Lexington. Most of these people, and the way it was designed was for, the car to get there on the individual ride. So at least putting this zoning in place started to get people to think and understand the importance of the concept of getting not only shuttles, but also starting to think of the infrastructure. There was no sidewalks, starting to talk about lighting, starting to talk about how to just access that area in a better way. So that's how we started from those 2 aspects.
And in 2012, I believe, you had convened some of the Hartwell area property owners to start discussing some of the issues in the area, and from those meetings, it became evident that transportation was a real priority for property owners in the area. And perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how you were able to organize the area property owners and the Rev Shuttle and how that came about.
So setting the zoning in place after 2008 was one step. So as most people in municipal government know, that changing zoning is a long, arduous process, and you don't see any change immediately. So that's one step that we took advantage during the low point of the economy, which was a good time. Next thing, when I came in, it was about 3 years ago, was then really, since the zoning in place, we hadn't seen any new development. So what needed to happen? And the next step was really culling all the property owners, getting them together in a room and having those initial discussions of what are some of our common issues. Because in an area like this, we have multiple property owners. Everyone has their own agenda, their own financial portfolio, their own tenanting mix. So, but what are some of the common ground issues? And obviously, as transportation came up as one. With most of these property owners and tenants now looking to connect to the inner core, how are we going to do that if we only had, they only had the car? What did we have the MBTA? We did, but it did not actually go down our main corridor, that 1.7 million square feet. We do not have the MBTA going down that corridor during the weekdays. So that was identified as a key piece a key issue, I should say, that everyone could really coalesce around. And fortunately, we did have our TMA. So kind of when we talked about, and Julia talked about a little about what Mass Commute's doing to support some of the initiatives statewide, it's funding TMAs, because if the TMA wasn't there and the collaboration with Patrick wasn't there, even if I had got all the property owners on board to say, hey, let's fund something and try to pilot a shuttle, I would have nowhere to have turned. So fortunately, having the TMAs there kind of backup support, understanding that there was already a shuttle in place in different locations, we got the property owners together and we said what we think we can do is pilot a shuttle for this area. And we were fortunate to secure a grant in that first year. The second year, the grant was gone. So with that, then what we did was, go to the town. And I can talk a little bit more about that. But essentially, then it was a communication with your selectmen and then kind of bringing that transportation demand management philosophy, not only to your residents and within those boundaries, but really how it also impacts employees who don't necessarily live in your boundaries. They live outside your boundaries, they're coming in. But that creates the same congestion and the same traffic that you're concerned about as an elected official for that community. So understanding that funds and the way they could allocate their public resources could also help not only spur economic development, but also now mitigate some of the congestion that they're seeing in the town, although it wouldn't be necessarily a direct benefit to their residents. So that was some, education and discussion that we had to take place with one-on-one with our elected officials.